Hey everyone, I'm talking about Metal Gear Solid 4. This game, this is kind of the first time Metal Gear kind of found itself on a next-gen console. The amount of technology that was available to us was really an insane leap and bound. And now there's a lot more technologically advanced things, and the world is much more advanced. So, unlike the previous game with Metal Gear Solid 3, we're taking place in the far future. There's definitely this opening mission, of which there are three. There's one in a kind of, desert setting, jungle setting, and then a final. You go to Germany, actually, and then finally the final assault carrier. This is obviously influenced by the other games of the day that were taking place, like Call of Duty. They were taking place in a pseudo-Iraq environment. The war on terror aesthetic was definitely very present here in this game. And it starts off as, a typical random armed conflict somewhere in the Middle East and quickly evolves into, robot ninjas jumping off the walls and all that good stuff Kojima is known for. So definitely, but it definitely was marketing itself as one of those action combat, games taking some place in a nameless Middle Eastern part of the world. I think another thing to note about this game is that I think why it was also very notable or prevalent is that, as the joke goes, PS3 had no games, or has no games. This is one of the only or first games that really launched on the PS3 that I remember being a worthy game of actually owning, but it was pretty much the only game that the PS3 had for quite some time. So this was kind of seen as the game for PS3 owners. And how is it? It's funny how it's more technically advanced and it's much more very well rounded off. But at the same time, Kojima even noted himself that he was kind of done with the Metal Gear series. He wanted to do his own thing, and this is when the tension between him and Konami really kind of began. It was very apparent. The fact that Snake is old, made old in this game, is very to the point that Kojima was like, I'm done with this franchise, I'm done with this character, I want to do something new and interesting and different. Another big thing that this game showed off is not only all the weird, graphical things it could do, technical things. So Snake's stealth suit has been upgraded in this game. So now what it can do is that if you just lie down and wait for a moment on the environment, it will automatically take the textures that you're lying on and apply it to your camo suit. So it's an adaptive camo suit, which is actually really a really cool concept. So, gone are the days in Metal Gear Solid 3 where you had to constantly open your inventory and equip the right thing and check, the camo percentage. Now you just lay down and it'll automatically adapt it for you, which is really, really cool. You have a motion sensor to detect where enemy motion is and attacks are coming from. You also have an exhaustion meter that is borrowed in from Metal Gear Solid 3. Again, what is very abundant in this game are the types of weapons that you can get. It's funny that you can basically pick up any weapon in this game, but in order to actually unlock and use it, there's this whole concept in the game about control ID and trigger ID that the gun will not fire unless you have the right ID associated with it. And so you have to go to basically a third-party PMC guy called Drebin to unlock all the weapons, even though you actually own them. And that's the main theme of this game. It's all about the over-technologization and control aspects of modern warfare and future warfare, along with the implementation of mechs and other kind of support classes in the future of warfare, which is, again, all very cool ideas. So yeah, there are so many, there are multiple types of assault rifles, multiple types of shotguns, multiple types of pistols, just like a huge plethora of different weapons to choose from. And this game definitely focuses a little bit more on combat than it did stealth in the previous games, just because that's the nature of the conflict of, in this universe. And they even kind of mentioned that to the extent where the Germany mission is kind of a forced stealth mission. So it's becoming a little bit more, this morning Metal Gear is becoming a little more action-oriented, along with the tone of the games at the time was, we want to see things blow up, and, guns and gun games and shooters were very, very popular around this time. And this one, Call of Duty came out. So there was a very big shift in these kinds of action-oriented games, even though the philosophy of Metal Gear Solid 2, at least, was based around, kind of the anti, the fact that video games might actually cause violence and train people to become soldiers and killers. It's kind of a thing that took kind of seriously in the previous Metal Gear games, but here we're just going all out action oriented. Another interesting thing to note is I don't know how to describe it, but it's honestly one of the strangest moments in video game history. Is the opening to this game is a series of TV shows or fake TV, and it's just the weirdest little thing. I think it was meant as like a tech demo that they just kept in the game, but you have all these weird things like these two like women, fighting and flying through the air, and it turns out to be a commercial for a PMC. And the opening cutscenes, there's one where there's a woman on a talk show and she's not sure what she's doing, and just it's so weird. It is so weird, but so interesting at the same time. There's another show where they're eating like raw meat and sewage. And that's just a random thing that is just in the game. That's something that I think was a PS3 tech demo that Kojima worked on and really wanted to keep it in. And just, again, like random Kojima wildness that he just wanted to have in the game. And again, feeding into that, so the world is kind of dominated by PMCs, or private military companies, that become the main contractors of all conflict around the world, to the point where they become the dominant corporations on the planet, not banking or technology, but actually war profiteering. And again, we'll see this theme come up in Metal Gear Rising, which is really interesting. Again, similarly, we don't have a single terrorist organization, but there is a 4-boss kind of structure called the Beast and Beauty units, which are the kind of main antagonists throughout the game, and each one has their own theme. And similar to the previous Metal Gear games, it's a bit more apparent here how each one is motivated by a different emotion: rage, fear, laughter, and sanity. I think I forget the last one. And you realize that that was a similar thing in the previous games as well, especially Metal Gear Solid 3. You had the fear, the rage, the end, and the pain. And so here it's more about the emotions that warfare has on people, and the fact that each one of these bosses, who are all women, at some point essentially were traumatized by warfare, and that emotion becomes their personality. Another very cool thing about this game, we have a bunch of returning characters, as this is kind of meant to be the big send-off and finale of this series. So Raiden is back, and he's already a cyborg ninja. We have Vamp returning. We have a bunch of returning characters who do a lot of really cool stuff, but Raiden's probably the biggest, and so successful that, of course, the next game is about him. Also, the introduction of the Gecko mechs are a really cool addition to this game's universe. So you have Revolver Ocelot return, and Eva even, and just pretty much the whole cast of characters from all the games are pretty much in this for the big final showdown. There's even a very cool, honestly, a nostalgia segment of this game where you actually return to Shadow Moses, and it's actually a pretty cool sequence that really is. It is fan service and nostalgia baity, but it is actually really worth it and very, very cool, and definitely showing that this is kind of the end of this series. Again, another funny thing about the intro to this game, while the game is installing on the PS3. Snake, or Old Snake, gives you a bunch of smoking tips on how to smoke a cigarette, which is just the funniest thing, in terms of use of tobacco. I think the ESRB had to definitely put that on this game, while in every other game it's kind of an afterthought. It was a requirement here. And so yeah, everything tries to basically conclude in this game. All of the secret loose ends are tied up, all the characters kind of done away with. And I swear, I think the ending cutscene for this game is at least an hour. Like, it just tries to do everything and wrap everything up. I was honestly sitting there for it felt at least 40 minutes. It's insane what Kojima does and what he gets away with. It's pretty funny. Also, the final fight and ending of this game is very, very cool. It really is really well made and done and operated. The final fight of this game is pretty much iconic. It is a very, very nicely done and very cool aspect that kind of lives on in video game history. That being said, how is the game overall? This is the one game where I'm very ambivalent, where, it's not honestly that great, simply because, there's still a fair, the cutscene to gameplay ratio is still roughly in the same place. But what's more different about this one is just that, I don't know, there's something just off about, the middle levels are just, the jungle level is totally forgettable. And the Berlin level is pretty forgettable, and it's just a very kind of forgettable game in terms of the actual gameplay. And the only time it actually feels like a Metal Gear Solid game is the last mission on the ship or carrier. You're sneaking around, taking out enemies. You have this tension thing, and then suddenly the game just jumps into essentially what is the pseudo final boss. And it's this weird thing where you're actually having fun and enjoying yourself, and suddenly it just ends as if they ran out of development time. I feel like there's so much they wanted to do in this game, and really their scope just got away from them in terms of story and also gameplay mechanics. And so that classic Metal Gear experience, it just isn't there. And what replaces it is a very mediocre experience. So even though this is the final game in the series and it wraps everything up, it just feels honestly underwhelming. It feels just very okay, whatever. In terms of the gameplay of it, the story is still pretty good. The whole Guns of the Patriots, essentially. So this game, what it's about is, the ways that soldiers are controlled. They have adrenaline control, cortisol control, weapon control. And it's kind of how war has changed, and war has become a business and a sport rather than a last resort for countries to negotiate resources between each other. And so the Guns of the Patriots is actually a code name for a system that is the heart of all of this control, which is a cool tie-in and concept. Of course, there's a lot of BS, I think, in this game, where basically everything is solved by nanomachines. Characters are, resurrected because of nanomachines. Characters cannot die because of nanomachines. Nanomachines are the answer to everything. Nanomachines are basically Kojima's magic bullet to say, yeah, he can jump through walls because of nanomachines. So that's his kind of special pill for the crazy things that he can pull off in this game's universe. It is funny though, because a lot of people quote this game and compare it to Fallout 3 on War Has Changed, and essentially they're saying, games are trying to be philosophical, while Fallout 3 says war never changes, while Metal Gear says war has changed. And it's funny because they're like, well, who's right? They're just saying these big overarching things without actually having any meaning to them. And it's funny because it does actually make sense where, as I said, Metal Gear goes into the details of why war has changed because it's so regulated now and so controlled and turned into an industry and a business, while Fallout 3 is talking just about the general human principle that, war and its conflict and its destruction, that never changes. So they're technically both right. But it's kind of funny they came out around the same time and both made these big generalized statements that were opposite to each other. Anyway, I'm not sure what else to say about this title. It's definitely something I actually tried replaying recently, and I just couldn't do it for some reason. I don't know why. It just felt like it would be too much of a time investment for something that I've already played. But yeah, it's definitely kind of the weakest of the Metal Gear games, unfortunately, despite it being the most realistic and technologically advanced. But yeah, it's still worth it because this is kind of the final installment in terms of the series. This is how it basically ended off everything. It tied up all the loose ends, and Kojima basically started to move away into other things. Anyway, guys, that's it for this one. I'll see you guys later. Bye.